Okay, picking up where we left off, we're on question 40 now. Yours is not numbered, but mine is. Talking about the VLOOKUP example. So I'm going to give you one and say, you know, what is it going to produce? The next one is matching. Now, remember the match command? You know, how does it work, or what's it going to provide? You know, what is the output of a match versus the output of like an index? You know, what's the difference between the two as an example? The indirect, I'm not going to ask you to do one, but I'm going to ask you some very simple questions on, you know, how does it work, or what's it for, or, you know, kind of simple kind of stuff. The next one talks about data tables. Remember how we took, you know, rows and columns and we converted it to a data table? You know, it's that kind of stuff. So, you know, how do you do that? How can you tell if you've done it? That kind of information. The next one is the structured reference. Now, remember we talked about, you know, way up there we had cell references in chapter 3. So now we're adding a different aspect to this. So now we're talking about structured reference. And so I'm going to give you a scenario and say, tell me what the structured reference for this thing is. Okay. The next one, oops, my page is stuck here, is about filtering data. Now, once again, we had filtering before, but now we're talking about filtering from a data perspective. So how's that different from, you know, just plain old filtering? You know, if I just turned on the little filter doodad for just a plain old rows and columns versus filtering from a data table, you know, what's it? Does it look different? Does it act different? You know, those kind of questions. And then custom filtering. Now, heaven forbid, I'm not going to make you do one of those, but I am going to ask you to remember in the discussion in lecture, and I went over this for like, I don't know, 2 or 3 minutes, explaining one of the most bizarre things that I don't like about custom filtering. If you can remember that, then you'll be doing really good on this question. Actually, that wasn't it. That was advanced filtering. So skip ahead. The question on advanced filtering is the one I just talked about. Now let's back up a little bit. Custom filtering. So I'm going to give you an example and say, you know, what is custom filtering about? You know, what can you get off the pick list, and what do you have to do to get type in to make things happen? So okay, now we're back on track. Pivot. So I'm not going to make you do a pivot, but I am going to ask you some questions about the action. So let's say I have a pivot table and it's currently doing a sum, and then I want to go in there and change it to count, you know, the action behind the thing. You know how the four little quadrants when you're building a, so one of the quadrants is the values. I want to change what happens inside the values guy. The next one talks about slicers, and remember how we had slicers and we attached it to, you know, a pivot table, and we were a very cool way of doing filtering. I kind of like that little doodad. I'm going to ask you some questions about that. The next one is, what are the rules for doing data in a pivot table? Okay, very simple stuff. I don't think it'll be too much trouble. And then the last two. And the last two are going to be, you're going to have to write me some stuff. You got to write me some formulas. I'm going to give you a scenario, like on a pivot, like on a VLOOKUP, and say, write me a lookup statement that will do what it's supposed to do. So I'll give you a scenario, and you say, aha, well, in cell, you know, Q99, I would type the following. And please remember to pay attention to whether or not it would be most appropriate to use relative addressing or absolute addressing when doing one of these things, okay? Remember that. The next one is kind of sort of the same. It's a sum if. I'm going to ask you to do a rather complex sum if. One where the criteria perhaps is not a constant. Yeah, you might have to dig through the book to find that section. Okay, now that's it. That's the list of the 52 well, you know, 50 in the pool, 2 that everyone gets. And I wish you guys luck. And as always, you know, the key to success is to, you know, pay attention in the lectures and take notes and look at the lecture notes that are posted. Perhaps look at the previous quizzes that are posted, and just gather all your stuff together. Sit down and study and take the test. Okay, I wish you guys well, and we'll see you again in the next chapter.